All right. Thanks everyone so much for coming tonight. So we'll begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the various lands from which we are all joining this meeting. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, particularly any emerging Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders who may be with us today. I also want to acknowledge that sovereignty of this land was never ceded. So, I'm Becky. I'm part of a group called ISICA, Indigo Shire Youth for Climate Action, and I'm in Motherglen at the moment. I'm studying chemistry at La Trobe, but I'm taking a break and it's been good so I can focus on ISICA work and our work with DELP and Osgreen, but mostly I've just been reading and playing games. If you don't know, ISICA stands for Indigo Shire Youth for Climate Action. We have 4 members and you'll be able to see us in the chat at the moment. It's Ali, Bridget, Jess, and myself, and we all have ISICA in front of our names. Ali and Jess founded ISICA last year. They founded ISICA when they ran a collection of meetings for youth in Indigo Shire to give their feedback on Indigo Shire Council's climate action plan, climate emergency action plan. And they were really great. Bridget and I actually joined through those meetings. So if anyone tonight really enjoys it, you can contact us with any ideas that you have, or you can join us. We absolutely welcome everybody. Our goal at ISICA is to connect youth so that they can build relationships with each other and also with organizations such as DELP. Our other goal is to provide accessible education and capacity building opportunities. So we don't want to just encourage youth to share their ideas. We also want to give them the skills that they need to do it effectively. Next, I would like to give a big thank you to the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning for supporting us to run these events. Thank you so much for your work in engaging with young people in our area. We really appreciate it. So welcome everyone to the first event in our Northeast Youth Climate Series. This series of events is an opportunity for youth to discuss issues which are important to us, like climate action and sustainability. We're going to have some other fun events and also some opportunities to learn from experts like First Nations elders and sustainability and conservation organizations. So keep a lookout for what other events we have planned, and hopefully you can make it to the other ones. Also bring a friend if you really like this one. Now, all of our events are being recorded. So if you can't make it to our future events, don't fret, it's recorded. You can watch it later and hopefully share it to people who you think might find it interesting. Today's event is Northeast Youth and Politics. We're going to focus on how youth can engage with government and politics on challenging issues such as climate change. First up, we're going to introduce our discussion and our panelists. Then we're going to have an opening response from each of the 3 panelists. After that, it's Q&A time. So that's when any questions that you might have will be answered and we can have a fun time just chatting, talking with each other, sharing ideas. Another way that you can contribute is we're going to have Menti questions that you can answer. You can do this anonymously, so if you're more comfortable contributing to the discussion that way, that's how to do it. And if you don't know what Menti is, don't worry, Bridget's going to explain it later. Now, speaking of Bridget, I'll pass on to you. Bridget is an ISICA team member and she's going to be moderating the panel today. Thanks, Bridget.
Thanks, Becky. Oh, echo there. Hi, everybody. I'm Bridget. Today I'm zooming in from Canberra on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country, but I'm originally from Waganya in the Indigo Shire. I'm in my 3rd year studying at the ANU, studying a Bachelor of Environment Sustainability and Molecular Biology. I'm completing a double major in Resource and Environmental Management and Agricultural Innovations. So I'm obviously very passionate about climate action, particularly as a young person, which is why I joined ISICA a year ago. So before we get into our panel discussion, I'd like to introduce our panelists this evening, and we're going to share a couple of questions with you all to get your perspectives. So we'll do this a couple more times during the event, but if you go to the website menti.com on your phone or other device, and Ali's just sharing at the moment. So if you go to menti.com, and there should be a code that will pop up on the screen in that little grey box at the top there. And if you pop that in, you should be able to answer the questions that will be coming up during the event. So our first question is, what issues do you want to talk to government about? And the second question asks you why it's important that young people's voices are part of government decision-making. So you answer to the second, these results in a couple of speakers can have your perspectives in mind when they're responding to our questions. So take time to answer the questions, and that will be great. So while we're thinking of responses, I'm going to introduce our panel discussion for this evening. So in the 2016 census, it was found that nearly 40% of Australia's population was under 30. So that's a lot of us. And I'm sure that's most of the people that are in this meeting today. In our federal parliament, only one of our senators, which is Jordan Steele-John from the Greens group in WA, is under 30 years old. And there is nobody under 30 in our House of Representatives. These numbers are similar in our state and local governments. But us young people have a lot to say, and we have a huge stake in decisions that are being made in politics right now, as they're the decisions that are going to affect us in the future. It can be difficult as a young person to know how to engage with government and politics, to know what we should be talking about and to who we should be talking to them, and what the difference is between our elected members of government and the government employees in the departments, to the sort of politics from the policy work of government, and to know where we all fit into this. I've certainly experienced this. It was only this year that I learnt the difference between a prime minister and a president. And I'm 3 years into my uni degree. Today, we're extremely lucky to have three amazing experts who you can see on the screen here, representing the three levels of government and with experience across parliamentary, departmental and council levels of decision-making to talk about these issues with us. I'll introduce them in more detail shortly, but I'd like to welcome Dr Helen Haines, the Federal MP for Indi, Steve Chapple, the Regional Director for the Port Phillip Region with the Victorian Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, and Jenny O'Connor, the Mayor of the Indigo Shire Council. We'll take a quick break for a quick reminder to get in those Menti responses. Remember to go to menti.com. Ali's chucked it in the chat there. So everyone should have had a bit of time to answer those questions now. So during the discussion today, there'll be plenty of opportunities to ask questions to our panelists. Feel free to pop them in the chat. And when you're putting them in the chat, just indicate whether you would like to ask a particular panelist, or if you would like to ask them yourself, we'll get one of us in the ISCA team to ask for you and read it out. So I think Ali's going to share our Menti results so we can see what our responses to the first question looked like.
It's coming. Computer having a little bit of, a meltdown right now. It's fine. I'll just go back to the first question. Sorry, it's on the second question right now. When it lets me.
Okay, thanks, Ali. So we can see on the screen here, most people were really wanting to engage with government in the climate change sector. That's obviously a very important issue for young people who are here today, as well as health and mental health and education. Another one that was really high I can see here was other environmental issues like bushfires, plastic pollution, extinction and deforestation, and the treatment of refugees I can see here under those little blue dots. So lots of really important issues here that young people are obviously very passionate about. And we'll look at the second question. So here, politics. So I'll read a couple out here. The future, politics and government, and it'll actually theme here. A lot of these decisions come a lot more in depth. So thank you everyone for your responses there. It would be great for our panelists to have these perspectives in mind when responding to our opening question. So I shall begin with our first panelist, and I'd love to introduce and welcome Dr Helen Haines, who was elected as the Independent Federal MP for Indi in 2019. Helen grew up on a dairy farm in southwest Victoria, trained as a nurse and midwife, and moved here to Northeast Victoria around 30 years ago. Helen worked with the Wangaratta Hospital and Chiltern Bush Nursing Hospital and cultivated a passion for rural healthcare. She and her husband raised their 3 children on a small farm just out of Wangaratta. In 2019, Helen decided to run for Parliament for the seat of Indi as an independent. Helen says in take care, getting rid of GUP and launched a youth advice people in the Indi region. So Helen, I know that you've been working to provide spaces for youth discussion and input in the past few months. So why is it important for young people's voices to be represented in decision-making? And how can young people engage with politics and decision-making on challenging issues like climate change, particularly at the federal level?
Well, thank you, Bridget. And so lovely to see you again. And Bridget, actually, I got to know her when she was volunteering in Australia, doing that, Bridget, and to get an understanding of anyone else listening, you can engage. Actually, Bridget, with that speeches I was and federal Parliament. It's this really great meeting, and I want to thank you for the work that you're doing in establishing Youth for Climate Action and for the invitation to be with you tonight, because for me, it's crucial to hear the voices of young people, and it's why I set up. I know that one of the things that wasn't said about young people of my own, two boys and a girl, and it is good for them and good for all of you. One who's one that is not contributing as it has been to the really damaging issues that we see with climate change. I know that all of you across this beautiful place that we call home love our forests, love our snow-capped mountains. I know that you love our rivers and our wildlife. I know that many of you get out there and enjoy that, and you want to protect it. And I know myself, and I think others on the line will be too. So, and I know that many of you have been impacted by the ravages of bushfires, and you know that if we don't do something to address our warming globe, that we're more exposed to terrible things like frequent and highly intense bushfires. So those things are really important to me too, and that's why I'm here tonight, really, to listen to your ideas about how we can make this a better place. Your voices actually really count. Many of you on the line tonight have the power to vote, and some of you who maybe don't have the power to vote yet will soon. And that stat that Bridget gave before, that 40% of the population is under 30. That gives you enormous strength, I think. I've almost lost the question, Bridget. The issues that you've just brought up, actually, in the Menti just now, are ones that I've been trying to do what I can about. Certainly health, you heard, that's been my background in an area that I'd like to champion very strongly. People in rural communities such as ours simply don't have the same access to health services as people in a metropolitan area. We don't have the same numbers of doctors. We have some challenges in our workforce more broadly, but if you look even at just the straight up Medicare spend, there's less money spent in Medicare in rural areas than there are in the cities. And that's by virtue of the fact that we don't have the same numbers of doctors and not the same numbers of bulk billing clinics. Yet in rural and regional Australia, we have higher rates of chronic disease. We have more people who smoke. We have poorer outcomes from things like cancer. So there's a lot of work to be done. We also know that mental health is so important, and it was really the work of young people that got us some headspace services in Northeast Victoria. So your voice is powerful. Firstly, up on the border in Albury-Wodonga, and then in Wangaratta, it was actually 2 young councillors from the Wangaratta Council who came to Cathy McGowan's office, just as Bridget did, and had the opportunity to meet with the health minister and convince him that we needed a headspace in Wangaratta. So your voices are very powerful. Don't underestimate it.
Thanks, Helen. Would you be able to give us a few more examples of how young people can engage with politics, particularly in the pandemic when a lot of people aren't able to have the wonderful opportunity to travel to your office? What ways would you like to see young people reaching out to you, or you reaching out to them to get more involved in these important issues?
Yeah, well, straight up, my youth advisory group, please join it. Go to my website and you can find out how. That's a very deliberate way. And I was really conscious that in the pandemic, the opportunities for me to engage face-to-face with young people just simply weren't there. So it was actually UNICEF who came into the Parliament as a couple of sitting periods ago, and there were 2 young people volunteering in my office then. And again, we've only been able to get volunteers in when we can because of the border closures and so on. But there were 2 young people from the Indi Shire from Yea, happened to be there that day when UNICEF arrived. And I said, come into this meeting, guys. This is UNICEF. You need to be in this one. So they did. They sat down. UNICEF that day were trying to convince parliamentarians that they should set up youth advisory panels. And we all looked at each other, and straight away I said, yeah, I'm completely up for that. Declan Thomas, who was there at the time, I said, do you want to make it happen? And he's run with it. He's made it happen for me. So there was a direct example, and now we've got this youth advisory panel running across Indi. And one of the first jobs they're doing is writing a 90-second speech for me on climate action. So I'll be giving that speech in October. There's other ways though, you know, like I know there's kind of old-fashioned ways, but I really encourage you to have a crack at this. You'll see older people write letters to the paper, to the local paper, and sometimes they're saying some stuff there in the letter to the editor about climate change that I reckon you guys could rebut really well. You know, I think use the power of the pen, and I think that would be a fantastic thing to do, write a letter to the editor. You know, you can also write things like op-eds, and I know quite a few of you here are undertaking university degrees at the moment, so I reckon you'd be pretty able to write an op-ed, send it to the editor of the local paper. I reckon they'd print it. So I encourage you to do things like that. It is, I know it's kind of old world stuff, but you know, it packs a punch still. And plenty of older people read the paper and they'd be really, I think, ignited to get behind you if they saw you doing things like that. Whatever electorate you may be in, I'm not sure if everyone's from Indi tonight, but you know, write to your MP, write to me, send me an email, ring me up. I will take your call. So if you think there's more that I could be doing, or if you've got ideas, and I'm really up for come with ideas, like kind of it's easy to say everything's bad. So if you've got an idea, please reach out to me. I am your member of parliament. I work for you. So please do that. And I'm pretty approachable, as are my staff. So you should do that. I can do things for you, like I can pass on your letters to a minister, and I do that a lot. I will send through issues that you have, and I will write to the minister directly and ask the minister to respond to your concern. So, you know, that's something I can do for you. Look, get involved wherever you can. The world's run by people who show up. So turn up to events like you are tonight. Join your local sustainability groups. They'd be so pleased to see you. Join Landcare. Do things like that. And you will have influence. And put your hand up when there's positions on committees available. And I know you know times hard to find, but how great would it be to have a young person as you know, secretary, treasurer, or president of a local Landcare group, or of one of our sustainability groups? So you can absolutely do that. And wherever you are, if you're at uni or at school or in a trade somewhere, you've got networks. Pull them in. Have a conversation with people. Get them on board. You know. Power in numbers, and there's, you know, people love to be included. Often they're just kind of waiting to be asked. Some people are a little bit shy. Sometimes they just need to be tapped on the shoulder and asked. So if you're passionate, and I know you are, grow your tribe.
Thanks, Helen. That's great to hear that there's so many different ways for people to be involved. Particularly, we've got a lot of people who are in primary school or high school still. So it's really great that they're able to reach out and get involved from such an active parliamentarian in our community. So thank you for that, Helen. I'll now introduce our second panelist, Steve. So Steve Chapple has over 20 years executive, local and state government experience, either as a CEO or regional director in both metropolitan and regional Victoria. He is a past national chairman of Economic Development Australia and has presented widely at numerous international and Australian economic development conferences, including those in the United States of America, New Zealand, and the Asia Pacific. Along the way, he has worked with many state and federal government ministers, elected mayors, local government councillors, the private sector, and diverse communities. Steve has led many teams and has a passion for developing high-performance leadership teams, an inclusive culture, driving innovation and performance, achieving results, and strong levels of accountability and delivery. Steve holds 4 degrees and is a 2016 Australian and New Zealand School of Government Executive Fellows graduate. Steve enjoys family and friends, travelling around the world and Australia, daily early morning meditation, good food and wine, and makes Shiraz to share with family and friends. He is currently the Regional Director for the Port Phillip Region of the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning with the Victorian State Government. Thanks for joining us, Steve, and welcome to our discussion. So, Steve, DELP has been so supportive of our group in trying to create more opportunities for young people in our community to engage on challenging issues like climate change. So why do you think it's important for young people's voices to be represented in decision making? And how can young people engage with politics and decision making on challenging issues like climate change, particularly at the state level?
Thanks, Bridget, a great question. Can I begin by congratulating Jess, Becky, yourself, Ali, and the ISYCA team for everything they're doing. It's really, really important. Also, we acknowledge my fellow panel members, Dr Helen Haines and Mary O'Connor, and of course our DELP colleagues that are here tonight. I'm proudly speaking on the Wurundjeri country. I'm coming from Melbourne. And you probably wonder, why am I here? Well, I need to extend the apologies from Claire Kiley, who is the Regional Director for the Hume region, who would love to have been here tonight, was unable to. So I've stepped in. As you just heard, I'm the Regional Director for the Port Phillip region, and our region covers about 5 million people in 32 local government areas, principally Greater Melbourne. But every region is covered across Victoria in 6 different ways. What's really important about what DELP does is that it has very close relationships with their communities, and every community in Victoria is in a DELP region. We work really closely with our communities. We work closely with our local councils, our traditional owners, water authorities, the CFA, Parks Victoria, a whole range of other land managers, issues that concerned our environment. So we're kind of often described as the policy implemented, we're the implementers of the policy at the pointy end. So can I start? It's also great to tonight to be here with you representing DELP. As you know, the Victorian government has very ambitious goals to tackle climate change, and it's really wonderful to be able to support the group like yours to really act. We've got the same goals, and we also need each other to succeed through effective and meaningful partnerships. But what I want to do is try and provide you tonight with a few insights into what the Victorian government's doing in the climate change space and how importantly you can get involved. And then the next part, I'm hoping to address the question for you. But just as a bit of a backdrop, the Victorian government climate change strategy, which you may be aware of, has a whole range of important targets. And the first one is really a roadmap to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Our state's got that in legislation. We've got 50% renewable targets by 2030, a 50% target to zero emission for new vehicles by 2030. The Victorian government believes that all our operations will be powered by 100% renewables by 2025. We're greening lots of our government buildings. We're certainly trying to create jobs in the renewable energy sector, many of which will be, in fact, in regional Victoria. We're also really encouraging and supporting action by local government to help them meet net zero targets, and supporting our regions to adapt. It's called an adapt-funded climate-ready program in Hume. As you may or may not be aware, this is a 3-year engagement and capacity building program. And it's really designed to increase the awareness of climate change and lead adaptation across Hume communities. And I understand that DELP in the Hume region, particularly through Jackie Smith and Kirsty Roach, who are here with us tonight, and others, are supporting your group through the Climate Ready Hume program to run projects such as training other young people to get involved in climate action and putting you in charge of allocating funds to climate change projects. And I understand that the Climate Ready Hume program is also launching its second round of community mini grants for 21-22. And the grants program is really aimed at supporting local communities to adapt to a changing climate in a number of ways. And the first one is about empowering community groups in the Hume region to lead climate change adaptation activities. And tonight is a great example of one of those activities, having the conversation. They're also looking at building skills and capacity to promote positive climate adaptation actions. So what's real and meaningful to people? Looking at increasing the community's awareness and understanding of climate change and its future impacts. That's a really, really important space that young people, I believe, have got a major role to play. Encouraging partnerships between organisations and groups in adapting to climate change. This would be a great way for young people to get involved, particularly in climate change adaptation actions, to engage with the community and lead some of these priority actions from the Hume Regional Adaptation Strategy. In fact, every region has developed a regional adaptation strategy. Not lots of words, it's really focused on practical actions. Previously, we've funded, I know locally, planting of an orchard and vegetable garden at St Bernard's Primary School in Wangaratta, which taught young kids, students, the important skills about living sustainably and taking care of the environment. And if your group has an adaptation project in mind, or if you want more info, then the Hume Climate Ready team certainly would be there, is there to help you. And groups, I understand, you can apply for up to $10,000 in funding, and there's about $70,000 available. The projects need to be completed by June 24 in 2022, so there's a bit of time, and the applications are open until the 17th of December this year. So there's certainly a bit of time to work on that. What I think is such a great idea is putting faith in you and enlisting other young people to drive grassroots action, because that's where it really happens. And you know, as Helen's just said, it happens locally, and I think that's the great strength that DELP, by partnering with us, can really help you in a practical way. I've got no doubt that the Victorian government will get great value from partnering with your group. And I suppose the other question you did ask was around, how do you get involved in decision making? And Helen's mentioned a few things at the federal level, but at that state level or that local level, you're already doing it. You've built relationships with DELP and local government, and obviously many more that I'm not aware of. But to use those contacts, and don't hesitate to ask for a seat at the table, demand a seat at the table. And Helen again has sort of indicated she's got the door open in federal parliament for you. Well, DELP locally in Hume can do the same thing at the state level. I think what you will find that many people in local government may not necessarily be over surprised, but I know that they'll be delighted to hear from you. So work at multiple levels, use your grassroots, your contacts, write to ministers, MPs, businesses, again, reinforcing what Helen's just said. But I think also inviting our minister to meet with your group face to face. It's been a difficult thing, obviously, for the last 19 months with COVID, but that's coming hopefully to an end, and we'll be able to get back to more and more of this sort of local engagement. And I'm confident that our Minister, D'Ambrosio, would love to meet and hear from you. In fact, I work very closely with the Minister, and I know she loves hearing from young people, particularly when they've got exciting initiatives and ideas. There's also the opportunity to join and leverage existing groups like, the Goulburn Murray Climate Alliance, the North East Community Energy Network, and the Farmers for Climate Change. And I'm sure you might already be members of those. But to ask to be actively involved, should not be a scary thing in being involved in delivering government priority projects. An obvious example, in my mind, is delivering the recently completed Regional Adaptation Plan for Hume. There was a lot of community involvement in that process. Again, there might be some opportunities in some of the big renewable projects happening up your way, and we can discuss those a little bit later. But also look for novel partnerships, and maybe with organisations or groups that you disagree with, but there's no sense in ignoring them. Try to engage with them, learn from them, understand, and hopefully influence where they're going to be. And don't be deterred by rebuttals. Governments can be slow to change the way it does things, but really persistent. Use the connections that you are building. I just wanted to echo a couple of things before I wind up. The world's run by people who turn up. Tonight, turning up is a great example of that. I did want to say one thing on behalf of Claire Kiley. It's a quote that she has prepared in the foreword of the Hume Region Climate Adaptation Plan, and it says this: the things we must do to tackle climate change go to the heart of how we live, interact with each other and with the environment. The good news is that by being gentler on the environment and on each other, we'll also be healthier, happier and better connected. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Steve. It's really great to hear about how the different levels of state versus federal can get involved. Certainly starting the conversation is a great way to go, but the most productive change really comes from taking those actions and taking that leap through the door at the federal level with Helen or in the state level with you guys. And so many amazing opportunities there, which I would really encourage everyone tonight to have a little bit of a Google and have a look around. And there's certainly some really great ways to be involved. So thank you so much, Steve.
And we can provide you with the details as well to forward to all the participants tonight to make it easy for people. Thanks, Bridget.
Amazing, that would be great, thank you. So last but not least, I'll introduce our final panelist, Jenny. So Jenny O'Connor was first elected as the Mayor of the Indigo Shire in 2016 and most recently was re-elected in the role in 2020. Jenny has a background in health and prior to her election in council was working to improve sexual health in rural communities. Previously, she has worked in nursing and counselling, fostering a passion for the mental health concerns of people in rural areas. Jenny likes gardening, cooking, and enjoying the local food and wine, exploring the local landscape. She is also passionate about environmental action and is proud of many of the actions that the Indigo Shire has taken to protect our environment and build our resilience to climate change. Thanks for being with us tonight, Jenny. So Jenny, when ISICA first came to the Indigo Shire Council with the outcomes from our youth consultation process last year, you were really supportive of the youth recommendations for the draft climate emergency plan and were keen to create more opportunities for young people in our community to engage with government on these issues. So why is it important for young people's voices to be represented in decision making? And how can young people with politics and decision making on challenging issues like climate change, particularly at the local level?
Okay, firstly, thank you, everybody. It's great to see people from my shire actually doing this amazing work. So I'm incredibly proud of you all and very proud to be your mayor. Indigo Shire is in Indi, so Helen is our local member as well, and Helen and I are good friends and have a very strong, I guess, shared view of how we want our communities to thrive, and Helen is working incredibly hard for us at the federal government level, and then I'm in a very different level of government at the local government level, and I think our lives are probably very different in terms of how that plays out, but it's very important that you engage with us all at every level of government. So, of course, with local government, the reality is it's as they say, the level of government that's closest to the people. And that is true in the sense that we don't make the big decisions that are made in Parliament House in Canberra, but we make the decisions, I think, that impact your lives in everyday ways. Of course, councils are known for sorting out roads, rates and rubbish. That's always been the thing that local government's known for. And it's true, you know, we make sure the bins are picked up, we make sure the roads are sealed, and that, you know, things work in your community at that very local level. We run the swimming pools and the libraries, the maternal and child health, very grassroots kind of stuff. So how does that fit with climate change? And I think there's been a huge shift in the role of local government. And again, while we have people like Helen in our parliament, thank God, we also have a bunch of people in government who are not doing anything around at the level that they should be around action on climate change. And as a result of that, people are looking more and more to local government to fill in that space. As much as the state government is at least acknowledging climate change and taking action that Steve's described, many of us feel it's not enough. It's for example, a net zero emissions by 2050 is absurd. I mean, we all know that climate change is a far greater risk, and the impacts of that are happening at a much more rapid level than that. So at Indigo Shire, we've said, okay, well, we're going to set a net zero target for 2035. And that's something that we will try and do at our local level. Next door to me in Alpine Shire, another council that Helen has under her umbrella, last night, they actually set last week, sorry, they set a target for 2023 of net zero. So again, you can just see how local government's going, okay, guys, you know, we get it. You can't do things as quickly as we want to. Well, we're going to take a lead on this. And that puts pressure on them because the local members are going, oh, we don't look so good now. We better try and lift our game a little bit. So that's there's a kind of political element to the stuff that we do at a local government level. The other thing that Indigo Shire did in 2019 was declare a climate emergency. And again, that is so far from what we're seeing at a federal level that it was felt very strongly in my community that someone needed to make this statement. You know, we are in an urgent situation. Climate change is an absolutely serious threat to our lives, really, to our health, our well-being, our economy, and to our safety. We live in a fire-prone area. We live in one of the most fire-prone areas on Earth, in fact. And so to try and, you know, hold this off or pretend that we can wait or that it's not as bad as the Greens say, or it's just nonsense. You know, all of the science tells us that this is a serious and real threat. So local government in my patch, very much as a result of the community saying to us, we need you to do something. We declared a climate emergency, and of course we're a very small local government. We don't have a lot of money. We can't do grand things. So what did that mean? It really meant that we were saying, we accept what a threat this is to our community, and we'll do everything we can to try and protect you, to work and to put pressure on the other levels of government by working. And fortunately, you know, Helen is entirely on board with this, to have that representation taken to the highest levels, but also to work just in our own patch. So what are we doing? You know, when we need to buy a new car, we buy an EV, we buy an electric vehicle. When we only buy one because we can't afford it anymore. We do it one at a time, but that's still, again, showing that we will do practical things to try and fix it. We have engagement from our young people in things like Plastic Wise Indigo, and that means townships in our shire, long before the state government said, you know, we'll ban single-use plastics, our supermarkets and our shops and said, we'll do it ourselves. We're going to do this because, you know, pollution's shocking. And this is the stuff that kids can get involved in at primary school level. So our primary schools are involved in plastic wise approaches, you know, reducing plastic. That means those kids, and some of you are probably watching tonight, they're aware of the environment. They care about the environment. As Helen said, you know, we live in a magnificent part of the world. These children and therefore their parents care enormously about where they live and protecting it. So that filters through to their adult parents who vote and who actually start to listen to what their kids are saying. So there's a lot of work that can be done at a very local level, even with young children, to change the way we see how we engage. And then the other thing about being on about local government is that you can get elected. It's, you know, and Helen, I know, would vouch for this. It's very hard to get elected to state or federal government. I know because I've tried many times and I never get there. But you can get elected to council. And so for those of you that are at that age, you know, in your sort of 20 upwards, you actually can put your hand up and you may well get into council. And even if you don't, you will be involved in a campaign where people will want to hear what you've got to say. The media will interview you. You'll get to speak at forums and you'll be able to say, climate change is something that there is not enough being done on. And that's why I'm running for council. You don't have to know the first thing about council because you get trained when you start. So you don't have to worry about knowing about it. You can actually put together a group of you and run what they call a ticket, where, you know, you have a group of 4 or 5 of you all put your hands up together And then you say, well, you know, you vote 1 for Ali, 2 for Becky, and if you vote 1 for Becky, vote 2 for Ali, and the votes all tumble through. It's a long and very involved process, preferential voting, very confusing, but just trust me, if you do that, one of you will get elected. And in my council, that was always old white guys that had been there forever, retired men who ran the show for decades. At the last local government election, we had Sophie Price, who some of you would know. Sophie got elected at the age of 24, young single mum, got in, and she has made one hell of a difference to that council. So, you know, it's really, really a way that you can both engage with us as a council, but you can also participate in it. And then, of course, as we're seeing tonight, the Indigo Shire Youth for Council Action. I mean, that's a local government supported group who, but you guys did it. We didn't do it for you. You stood up and said, we want you to help us because we care about this issue. And so we're supporting Issachar to have a summit for young people. And hopefully that will, you know, put the word out and engage even more young people from not just the regions, but even wider than that. So I guess my message to you is local government is accessible. We can't make the big decisions like the federal government could if they wanted to, but we can still, I think, you know, impact the conversation, engage with communities, and you can become decision makers, because you're not just, it's not just your future that's impacted by this. You are the leaders of the future. You know, it's going to be you guys sitting in Parliament House, sitting in council chambers, you know, being in Steve's roles at DELP. And any one of you could be in those roles, and we want you to be there. So the other thing we can do is mentor you and support you. And Helen does that beautifully at Parliament House. I'm happy to do it however I can in my role as mayor. So I hope that gives you a sense of it's a very different kind of tier of government, but we still do make decisions that matter. And hopefully we can engage with you much more than we have in the past.
Thank you so much, Jenny. It's really great to hear how local groups can support young people, and especially when first beginning to engage with politics or environmental issues. It's great to start on the smaller scale, looking at the local community, because that's where people really want the most change to happen is within our local community, which is where the local Shire councils really shine in highlighting the community. So between our 3 panelists, firstly, thank you so much for participating. That was a really wonderful discussion, and I hope everybody got a lot out of it. It really sounds like the process of beginning to tackle these issues that us young people are obviously really passionate about. It all begins with a conversation, as you've said, and engaging and talking to our local council members, local state members, federal members. But getting into the action is really where the change can begin to happen. And there's so many opportunities to become involved in those action-making processes across the 3 levels, wherever you feel most comfortable and most passionate about engaging. So on that note, we're going to put up another Menti question and give you a few minutes to respond. So Ali is sharing our screen right now. So there will be a new code, which is in the blue box at the top there. So have a look at the screen now and enter that code to menti.com, and Ali's just popped it in the chat for us. So the next question is, what are the biggest barriers or challenges to engaging with government? So I'll give people a chance to answer that question. But while everyone's answering that question, did we have any burning questions from the audience that someone would like to ask?
I think Charlotte had a question.
Yeah, Charlotte, if you're happy to unmute and ask away.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'll just find it. So I know that Issachar is a politically neutral group. So do you think that there's like space in politics for the climate change discussion, or do you think that we're at a point where it needs to be bipartisan collaboration?
Charlotte, did you want to ask that question of anyone in particular, or just jump in?
Just anyone who feels like answering it, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, I might kick off and try. I mean, in an ideal world, it should be bipartisan. Of course, it should. Climate change is such an existential issue for every person on the globe, and I think one of the great tragedies in Australia is that we've had a decade of major parties fighting each other on climate action, and we've lost a couple of prime ministers over it. And that's put us in a position where we're really behind the game. I'm really delighted to see the leadership at local government area. Jenny's just talked about tonight about Indigo Shire being a small local government that declared a climate emergency and then put into place the kind of activities that they could manage at a local government area, and showing extraordinary leadership. All of you young people here tonight showing leadership on the ground, and you have been let down by the federal government of multiple persuasions, not just one, 10 years worth of it. I don't think that we will get bipartisan approach to climate in Australian federal politics. So what we need to do is make sure that we have that we exercise our right to vote, and that we exercise our influence as citizens. And for me, as your federal member, when I stand up to talk about climate action in the Parliament, I stand up bringing ideas from my community. The local power plan work is one such example, and that was co-designed by loads of people across Indi. I had a 15-member expert panel almost entirely from Indi. We had some ANU experts in there as well. Lots of young people contributed to that local power plan. Again, I saw on the chat people talking about totally renewable yak and dander. Plenty of young people involved over there, and in fact that was initiated by young people. I've now got a piece of legislation before the Parliament that would enable more totally renewable yak and danders or totally renewable beechwoods or rutherglens to truly scale up. So I hope that I'll be able to achieve that. I'm trying to encourage members of the government who are on a very powerful committee that will decide. It's really hard when major parties in the federal government don't really want to take solid action. So I'm not optimistic about bipartisanship. I think that we have to elect the people that we need. Leadership at state level here in Victoria, in New South Wales as well. It's like the federal government are just being left behind. So don't underestimate the power of local and the power of you being bipartisan, of you collaborating. And I would say all power to you. Keep going at this level, and it's an extraordinarily powerful example to federal politicians.
I'll just concur with Helen's comment and just say, in addition to that, be, what's the word I can use? Be persistent, don't give up. As we said before, it's easy to kind of think it's going nowhere. The reality is, particularly for politicians, from observation, the more that they hear from people, the more potentially they can take notice. And I think, just echoing the words from both Helen and Jenny, I think connect with them and keep the message coming, because this is not just an issue for your backyard or your community. It's for a whole globe. I look at things like, from my area down here, around sea level rise as a consequence of climate change, and the massive destructive impact that that's having on our coastline, not just in Victoria, but around our country, and in fact, around the world. Very, very significant challenges coming for all communities and governments. This is not something about pointing a finger to somebody else. We all collectively are going to have a responsibility for this. And unfortunately, many of the young people here tonight, you're going to inherit that legacy. So the earlier that we can start with that lobbying and communicating those really important messages, the better we're all going to be.
Yeah, look, I won't take up time on this. I really agree with what Steve and Helen said. And the really clear message is, as you get to 18, register to vote and vote. And that's how you change things in the end. We've done that in Indi. We voted a very, long-standing politician who was anti-climate change, all those things. She actually got tipped out because the community stood up and said, we're tired of this. And then we had, firstly, Cathy McGowan, who was an amazing leader, and then Helen, who's doing such a great job. So, we have the power of the pencil in the ballot box. For those of you that have registered to vote, use it really wisely. You can change things, you really can. And as I said earlier, stand up and be a candidate as well if you're brave enough to have a go at that. Or get involved, get involved in Helen's campaign or run for council. You don't have to be the front face of it. You can actually really join in with people who care about the issues you care about, and then your voice is very powerful.
Thanks, everyone. Some really great responses there. And thanks for the question, Charlie. That was a really wonderful question. I think Ali's going to share our Menti results if everyone's had time to answer those. So here's how the results lied. What are the biggest barriers and challenges to engaging with government? So most people thought that it's very difficult to know how to approach government, or they felt nervous about talking to someone in government, or not knowing how to speak about the certain issues and what kind of language to use. So I'm going to ask the panelists to respond to that question now, keeping the audience's responses in mind. Why do you think young people might find it challenging to speak with government about the issues that concern them? And what can you, as politicians or people involved in government decision-making, do about this? So, Jenny, I see you're up on my screen. I'd like to go first.
Look, I just think we're just people, whether I'm the mayor or Helen's an MP, or like we're just people. We're mums, we're dads, we play piano, we do all normal stuff, whatever we do, play sport, And I think that gets lost, and there's almost like a celebrity thing about politicians. And I grew up surrounded by politicians, so they were just like my neighbours. They were just family friends. I was always amazed when they were on TV, or it was like, oh, that's just so and so. So I kind of never had that. I'm in awe of someone because they're a politician. They're just people who are doing a job. They get pretty well paid usually, and their job is to do what you want them to do. I mean, they're elected to represent you. Even if you don't vote for that person, it's still their job to represent you. There's plenty of people that didn't vote for me, but I'm their mayor, and I am responsible for representing the whole of the community. And not everyone agrees in that community. Everyone has different opinions. So that's a hard thing to do, but I can respect the different viewpoints. So I think, when people say I don't know how to approach them, or I'm really nervous, it's like, just think she's just like mum. She's just another adult who, you talk to your teachers, you probably talk to GPs, you probably talk to older people, adults in your lives, that you can feel that you can talk to. And I would say many of us are like that. Not all of us, like everybody. There's some that are harder to approach than others, but I've got a mobile phone. You can ring me up, and I'm happy to talk to people. I do it all day, every day. And I'm also happy to come to your school or sit down with a group of you. So all you can do is ask. And you'll pretty quickly work out who are the people that you can ask and who are the ones that don't respond or, make it hard for you. So, yeah, that would be my advice. Just don't see us as some powerful kind of entity. We're just ordinary people doing a job.
Thanks, Jenny. Steve, did you want to have a go?
Yeah, I was just going to echo everything that Jenny's just said. I wrote down, just have a chat like you talk to your mum or your dad or your good friend or a neighbour or a teacher. It's one of those conversations. It doesn't have to be anything over flashy or fancy. It's just the art of having the conversation, and all of you can speak. So all of you, as Jenny's rightly said, can do that. The other thing I was thinking around was practice with a friend. Before you do that, just look in the mirror or just talk to a friend and say, can we pretend to have this kind of conversation? How can I get better at doing that? And as we all know, practice is really what makes us perfect. The other thing is around use of social media. We haven't really talked about that yet, and I'm interested to know the view of young people about interacting with politicians, particularly around social media. I'd be interested to know, particularly from Helen's point of view, how social media either does or doesn't connect with pollies. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Helen, would you like to have a go at answering?
Yeah, sure. Look, absolutely back in what Jenny and Steve have said. I know lots of MPs now, but I didn't before I became an MP myself. And the only MP I actually really knew was Cathy McGowan prior to becoming a member of Parliament. And I can tell you that we're all pretty normal, everyday people. And I think there's a real problem of any MP that you approached, or a councillor or a state MP, was not approachable to you, that's a pretty strong reason not to vote for them next time. I see it as very much my job to meet people where they're at, to take telephone calls from them, emails, and so on. Look, I get about 3,000 emails a month, I've got to say. So I can't answer every one of them myself, but my staff absolutely do respond. And if there's someone who makes a request, though, to see me or to talk to me, I always say yes. So you've only got to ask, as Jenny said. Likewise, and there was a bunch of school kids from Bright dropped into my office the other day in Wangaratta. They were on a treasure hunt, and one of the things they had to do was find out where the federal MP's office was. So they came to the front desk, and I was in my office out the back, and I could hear all this laughing. I thought, oh, what's this? So, I came out the front, and there was a whole bunch of young students. We had a great conversation. We just sat down there and then got a photo out the front, and off they went. So I love meeting with young people. And as I said at the beginning, I have 3 young people in my own family, and they'll tell you that it's pretty easy to have a conversation with me. Steve, just in response to your question with social media. Look, social media, as everyone on this line knows, can be great or it can be rotten. But it is a mechanism to reach out to many people in leadership positions, whether they be local, state or federal government, or other positions as well, over in state government departments potentially too. I guess I would say to you, look, and I guess you already know this, if you engage in a really positive and respectful way, as you would to anyone, that can be a way of communicating with your MP too. I think there's things like, and I use quite a lot of social media. Facebook and Instagram and Twitter are the 3 that I mainly use. Some of the young people who I encounter said, Helen, you've got to get onto TikTok. I don't know, I don't know about that. I might be too old for TikTok, I think. But like, we do use it, and there's often comments there. And when I get time, and time is something we only all have limited amounts of. You've only got 100% time, so you have to divide it up. Occasionally I'll jump on and respond to comments. Sometimes people send me a direct message on Twitter and I'll respond to that. But I reckon the best thing from my perspective is a direct reach out. And look, you don't have to say anything fancy. You don't at all. I noticed on the chat there was someone there mentioning about the kind of skills you might be looking for. One of the things that I've started doing, and it's very new on my advisory panel, is one of my fabulous young policy advisors. His name's Mark Lung. He's great, lovely guy. He does all my work in Parliament with me. He jumped on with the youth advisory panel and has gave them some coaching around speech writing. I'd be really happy to do that through my advisory panel. Any other kind of skills, maybe letter writing, or a few tips on any communication methods that you might want to explore, or how to get engaged with policy, for example. I've got 4 really great policy team members, and they're all under 40. I think you'd probably really like them. So I'm very happy to share them through my advisory panel. So that's another opportunity for you.
Thanks, Helen. Firstly, I think you should definitely get TikTok. I think it's a wonderful way to connect with today's young people. And certainly one of the aims of this event tonight was for a lot of people that are here, this will be the initial connection for meeting people in your positions and meeting you guys, and the way that you've all been really open and inclusive in your answers, I'm sure, and I hope, has really helped a lot of people feel that they might be more confident and have more power to reach out in the near future. So now we're going to pass to some audience questions. So we've had some wonderful questions in the chat here. I might call a few people out, and if you're happy to read out your question, that would be wonderful. Pat, I see you've had a great question here. Are you able to ask that question to our panelists, or if you'd like one of us to read it out, that's
I
fine
guess I
too.
can do that, Bridget. Thank you very much. And I guess I probably should have put in the chat, it's probably directed to Jenny chiefly and maybe Stephen as well. But I was just wondering, is there a way that the different LGAs share information on a lot of their practices, you know, with regards to sustainability, electric vehicles, renewable energy policies with regards to Shire infrastructure? Because I think in the Indigo Shire here, potentially we have a enthusiastic LGA, but local government that is, but potentially in other areas where there might not be the level of engagement or enthusiasm, is there a way that you can present things to them that they can sort of just say yes to, or look at and adopt more readily? Yeah.
Yeah, look, thanks for that, Pat. I think that you're right. Like we tend to stick to our own patch a bit because we kind of have to, you know, that's where our focus is, of course, in the same way as an MP will look at their own electorate. But obviously there's a broader picture there. We do have regional get-togethers, both through Helen with her, like the mayors from Indi get together. I think we're doing it tomorrow, Helen. And I'm on the board of Rural Councils Victoria, and there's 38 rural councils represented there with some councils and CEOs. It is hard because every council is its own. I mean, local government's political. And when I say that, guys, I don't mean Labor, Liberal, Green. I mean, there's politics about who gets in, you know, people push their own barrows. There'll be really differing views on things. And people want to get elected, so they'll try and get a group to support them on an issue, for example, or represent an issue that might help them get in. So if you don't have a willingness at a council level to acknowledge climate change and to work on that, then they are not going to be very interested in what Indigo does. On the other side of it, by us declaring a climate emergency, the communities around us in, say, Alpine Shire started going, well, we want our council to do this too. And so, in fact, they have just done it. And there was a lot of resistance to that. And, you know, I was speaking with councillors there and in other neighbouring councils where there was a lot of kind of fear that, like, if we do this, we'll get a lot of backlash because, you know, lots of people don't believe in climate change. But in fact, their community started going, well, if Indigo Shire can do it, why the hell can't you? And so it does actually create a momentum. And then once that happens, they will start working together around, well, what are you guys doing about that? And, you know, how do we share resources? How do we get ideas from each other? So it does still always come back, I think, to the community is the leader. You know, you put the pressure on us to then make the decisions, or you elect people that will take those decisions into places of power or whatever. So if you want your council to do more, tell them to do more. You know, like actually put some pressure on them, because, you know, at the next election, when there's 20 people running and 5 are going to get elected or 7 are going to get elected, one of them's going to go, well, I'm hearing from the community that climate change really matters to you. And they're going to get that vote and they're going to get in. So that's kind of, I don't know if that, Pat, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but we don't have a great way of spreading information between us, because there's not always the same interest, to put it bluntly, really. Yeah.
I think you've done a great answer there, Jenny. It's really, really tough. But there's just a couple of things building on your response for Pat's question. One is the state government has a process called regional partnerships, and it's something that's gaining a lot of momentum at the moment, obviously in the lead up to the November election for state government. But that process brings regional councils together over a series of forums over the next number of months. And there may be a great opportunity. I'm not sure how you get your hand into one of those forums, but the mayor might be able to do something there. But to get the voice of the community around some of the discussions that are crafted over a series of months, and I understand that that's going to start winding up a lot in the next little while, that might be an opportunity. The other one is, I'm a former CEO in local government, and I remember when councillors would come to me and say, I've been inundated with emails. That always captures their attention. So doing it respectfully and constructively, but you've got access, I assume, on the Indigo Council website. All of the councillors' details will be there. Reach out to them on the email and encourage your friends and colleagues and associates and others to do something similar. Because once local councillors start receiving emails, quite a lot of them, it might be a bit of a campaign or something like that, I can guarantee you they will take notice. And that's one way of maybe trying to do a subtle way of lobbying.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks, Jenny, as well. We'll move on to our next question from Lydia. I've heard Lydia's having a few issues with her mic, so I'm happy to read that one out. So how can local school groups engage more with environmental issues in their community? Maybe, Jenny, did you want to start?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want me to just talk about what happens at Indigo? Because I've got some great examples.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so for example, the Warringah Primary School, which is a gorgeous little primary school, near to Beechworth. They have a community garden where they grow their own food. They have a habitat area where they're encouraging, native animals to be able to find a safe place there. They are very clear about trying to remove plastic so that they, there's a kind of policy, if you like, for the school that you don't use single-use plastics in your lunches and that kind of stuff. So they're very simple things that every school can do. And in fact, many of the schools around here do that. They also learn First Nations language. So the kids are growing up with a real appreciation of the fact that, before white settlement, this area belonged to the First Nations people, and we should honour that and again respect the land that they were living on. So, I think there's many different ways that schools can be involved. Even things like just a rubbish challenge, a litter challenge. It's just, who can reduce their litter the most over a term, in which classroom, that kind of stuff. So I see lots and lots of things that kids at primary school level do right across my shire, and very innovative. And it's always driven by the kids themselves. As we don't tell them what to do. We don't come in with some great idea. Because we don't need to. They actually will come up with ideas themselves. So, I think if you talk to any primary school in Indigo Shire, and probably most councils really, you would hear some fantastic ideas that have come from the kids themselves around ways of engaging. And then again, they can get us to come along to stuff easily just by asking, and we will come. Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. Helen, if you don't mind, I'll swing to you if you had anything to add on this question.
Look, I think this engaging with schools is one thing that we have a federal parliamentary education office actually that has a whole lot of resources and opportunities for young people to learn more about their parliament and the system. And I think, Bridget, you mentioned right at the very beginning that it took until second or third year university to understand the difference between a prime minister and a president, for example. There's a really amazing resource through the Parliamentary Education Office. And when borders are open, and many schools come up to Canberra, and every time there's a school from Indi that's visiting and I'm in Parliament, I always meet them, and it's a total joy to me. They have a tour of the Parliament, they see where I sit. Sometimes I come into the mock Parliament in the Education Office with them, and we practice being the member for Indi. They ask me fantastic questions, and they're often really hard questions. It's just great. And it is a really terrific way for them to learn about how the place works and to know who their member is, and to know that Parliament House is their house. It belongs to the people. So that's really important to know. And you know, even the design of Parliament House with the lawn over the top, where you can't walk over it anymore, sadly, but it was designed so the people were at the top of the pile, so they could walk right over the top of the Parliament, and the parliamentarians were underneath them. That's very powerful symbolism. I engage with student leaders from schools too. So school captains and prefects through their school can make a time to come up to Parliament House and meet me. And we go out for lunch in the members' dining room and we have a chat, and it's really fun. So there's that. I love actually going out to schools, and of course we haven't been able to do much of that lately, but very recently I met with the Rutherglen Primary School grade 5-6. We did a Zoom meet because we just hadn't been able to meet in person, and it was just extraordinary how fabulous the questions were, the amount of work that the teachers and parents had done with those students in preparation for meeting their Member of Parliament, and the kind of conversations we had were really great. So again, I think there is a lot of opportunity there. Many schools don't know about this, that you can request to see a Member of Parliament. I got a fantastic bunch of letters from Barnawaltha Primary a little while back, telling me all the reasons why they need to get new flags. Oh, it was just the best letters. Dear Helen Haines, our flags are ratty tatty, shocking, awful. Please could you bring new flags to our school? And just great. I had a young little fella actually from Millawa, from a kindergarten age kid, wrote to me recently saying, dear Helen Haines, can you help get Halloween made a public holiday in Australia? Here are all the reasons why we should have Halloween. And I had great fun writing back to this little guy talking about Halloween being so much fun and being an ancient Celtic festival, and that, yep, if he could get Halloween up at Millawa Primary, I will definitely ride in on a broomstick. We had lots of fun with this. I see here in the chat that we need to get this in high schools, high schools on board. Absolutely you do. Again, some of my young staff who, have been to high schools like many of you, and then got on to uni and done other things, and now working for a Member of Parliament. Very happy to come along with me to high schools and talk about their careers and how they've ended up working for an MP and why they're doing that and what they hope to achieve by doing that and where they want to go next. I think we should do a lot more of this. I think it's really important, and I think it helps you realise that in fact you're the boss, you're the voter, you're the citizen, and you can really make a difference.
Thanks, Helen. I think that's definitely given people a lot to think about in terms of reaching out to you and really getting involved. I think there's some phenomenal opportunities there. I'm going to, Ali's just sharing our final Menti question there. So if everyone can see that on the screen and pop in the code there. So our final question is, what would you like to see youth or government engagement look like in our community? So I'll give everyone a few minutes to answer that question. And while we're answering the question, we've got a couple more great questions in the chat. So I might pass on to Ella if she's happy to turn on her camera and ask her great question in there. Ella's around.
Yeah. I had a question, because getting involved in these kind of groups and programs is, I think, in the interest of many young people. But I think the fact that it's so intertwined with politics can almost act as a deterrent, because I think like local, state and federal, the way government works can be complex and daunting. So my question is, do you need to have an in-depth understanding of how the intricacies and how these governments work in order to get involved in something like these groups and programs?
I didn't mute my microphone, so I'm going to jump in straight away, Ella. No. You do not need to have any intricate knowledge of this at all. You don't need to have a degree in politics. You don't need to know a politician. You don't need to understand the system. You just need to have a passion and an interest and a desire to get involved. And most people don't have intricate understandings of how policy is formed and legislation's made and who does what, because it doesn't matter. The most important thing is the issue. The most important thing is the impact and the result. And you should feel very, very open and able to participate. And it's actually people who have less ideas sometimes about the intricacies of politics and policy, that have the purest, most straightforward, lean, sensible and elegant solutions. So I really encourage you never to be held back by what you perceive as a lack of knowledge. I think you'd be amazed how much knowledge you have.
Can I just jump in and support that? A lack of subject expertise certainly doesn't preclude you or others from having a say. And if you look at some of the debates that we have, clearly there's not a lot of subject knowledge or expertise there. So the reality is, don't underestimate yourself, get involved and have your say.
And look, I'll just say from a local government level, which, as I said, it's probably the easiest one to get involved in if you really want to be in a decision-making role initially, at least. No, like most of the councils would have no clue. They put their hand up because they're interested in an issue, or they're involved in some community action, or they just hate the councillors that are there and they want to get rid of them, and it's often the motivation. Think they can do a better job than the ones that are there at the moment, and none of us have a clue. And so when we get elected, my experience was when I did get elected, I suddenly went, oh my God, I'm a councillor and I wouldn't know that. I don't know the Local Government Act. I don't know anything. And, we get educated. People know that when you come in, you need to be supported and trained, and that is there. So we get trained and put into the role, and we're told what our role is and what it isn't. And often councillors don't really know what they should and shouldn't get involved in. They have to be taught that. So, and also people that have been there before you will also support you and help you. So no, in fact, I agree with both what Helen and Steve said. It's the people that play the party politics game that are not actually often focused on the issues. They're just focused on the party and winning and power, and what role they're going to play and whether they're going to be the Premier or the Prime Minister or whatever. It's the people that stand up, like Helen did, like I have, that say we care about issues. And the issue might be, climate change and how we treat refugees, the ones that Helen and I would stand on very strongly, or, whatever. I know integrity in politics is one that I'm so glad that Helen's standing up so strongly on. They're the issues that matter, and people respond to that. That people, they care about those things when they go to vote. So, I would say no, please don't feel intimidated. And the other thing is, if you were really interested in, for example, running for council, you could bring someone like me and just talk to me and ask me questions, and I'd help you. So you can always access support and help. Yeah.
Yep. Can I jump in there, Jenny, and say, yes, get yourself a mentor. Ask someone like me or Jenny to help you if you've got questions or there's more you need to know. Please do that. And I'll just give you one other example. Jenny just mentioned that I've been a very strong voice in the national conversation about integrity, transparency in Parliament and the establishment of a Federal Integrity Commission. When I started as a parliamentarian, I had no idea about the intricacies of what is an enormously complex piece of legislation. People lined up to help me. Retired High Court judges, Federal Court judges, Supreme Court judges, people I was completely and utterly in awe of. There were 5 of them turned up in my office one day. I mean, these are really famous, eminent people. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I am so far out of my depth here. And I said to them, I am so far out of my depth here. They said, we're here to help. And they have been. And Justice Margaret White, who's just a most extraordinary woman. She's tiny, actually. She's tinier than you, Jenny O'Connor. Absolutely extraordinary, brave woman who I've admired for decades. As she was leaving my office, she said to me, Helen, you are one of the bravest people I know for taking this on, and I am here for you. You can contact me anytime, and together we can make it happen. And I really need you to know that if you are passionate, if you're willing to try, if you're courageous enough to stand up, there are other good, courageous people who'll back you in. So go for it. Being scared is never a reason not to do it.
Thanks for your answers, everybody, and thanks for a great question, Ella. That's certainly something that I've really grappled with, not knowing much about politics, but trying to get involved anyway. So if everyone wants to look at the screen, we've got the answers to our Menti question. So what would you like to see youth and government engagement look like in our community? So we've got youth with a seat at every table. There needs to be more of it with young people from all demographics, more advertising, lots of capacity building opportunities so young people can understand how government works. Some really fantastic responses there. I'll pass to our panelists and just emphasize a quick 30-second response from each in the interests of time. So how do you think that youth engagement should look like in our local community? I'll pass to you first, Steve.
Okay, look, great responses, and probably, what can I say? I think all of those things are important. It's about having your voice, finding your voice, and don't be afraid to use your voice. The final thing I'd mention is just to reiterate, the Climate Ready Hume team in Delve, in your area, have got $70,000 available. So you can apply for up to $10,000. So why not get in contact with them and give that a crack? This could be a great opportunity. You've got nothing to lose. So yeah, we've got the, I think in the chat, we've got the email address in there, but reach out to them. They're not scary people. They're here tonight. They're listening actively. They'd be really, really keen to help.
Thanks, Steve. Jenny, I'll pass over to you.
Oh, just ask us to come to you. You know, it is scary going to Parliament House or coming to a council chamber for a meeting. It's intimidating. It's great if you do it, and I'd encourage you to do it. But, you know, we'll come to your schools. We'll come to your forums. We'll come to your summits. We'll come to meet with a group of you for lunch, like, you know, whatever. I'm really, really keen to engage where you feel comfortable and where you feel, and you're inviting us into your space instead of us saying you have to come to us. It's like, no, we should be coming to you. You know, that's so, particularly schools. I mean, that's obviously where a lot of you are, universities, schools, primary and secondary. You know, just ask and we'll be there. I'll be there. I absolutely guarantee you I'll be there.
Thanks, Jenny. Over to you, Helen.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Please apply for the scholarship Steve's referring to. You should do that. There's money, you know, go for it. I agree with Jenny. Invite us. You know, today a young man had asked me if I would meet him for a cup of coffee in a cafe. I said yes. We did. We sat down and talked about climate action. Sometimes it's hard to reach people like me because I'm in Canberra about 20 weeks of the year. That doesn't mean you don't try. You send an email through to my office, to my diary manager, and we'll try and make a time. So, and I love visiting schools, so please invite me. I often say to people, why don't you invite me? They're worried I'm too busy. I will make time. I will prioritise it. Just make the invitation.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. I'm sure I'll be inviting you to my next climate party. So that concludes our panelist session. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating. We've had lots of questions in the chat. I'm sorry we didn't get the chance to answer all of them, but if you'd like to send them through to us, then we can pass them on to our panelists, or if you'd like to contact the panelists directly and ask your question, I think that will be a wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much, Steve, Jenny, and Helen. I've really learned a lot tonight, and I hope everyone else has. I know I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident to be reaching out to you guys in terms of voicing my thoughts on issues that are important to me, like climate change and other issues for young people. And I hope that a lot of the people in our audience here feel the same. So thank you again. And I'm going to pass on to Jess for our final conclusion.
Thank you so much, Bridget, and thank you to all our panelists tonight. It has been such an amazing discussion, and we have gotten so many more questions than we were expecting. So it has been so wonderful. And I hope you get the chance to ask the panelists your questions separately after this and get the answers to them. I was jotting down a few key points from the night that I would bring up at the end here, but it has ended up being a really, really long list. You all said so many amazing things. So I'll just touch on a few things that I think were brought up a few times. The first one was brought up by Stephen at the very start, and he said, don't ask for a seat at the table, demand it. So I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind. You have an allocated, or you have space in the world, so remember to take it up. I think all of our panelists tonight have shown us that they want our engagement and they want our participation in these sorts of matters. And so make sure you jump in there where you can and where you're really interested in doing it, and take up your space in the room. Another thing that was really reiterated tonight is you don't need to have the knowledge and experience, you just need to have the passion, which is something that I've learnt a lot through Isiaka. You know, none of us coming into this had any knowledge or experience about any of these issues. We didn't know how to, you know, I didn't even know how to run a Zoom at the start, and a year later we're here running all these events. So just start from where you can and work up from there. So thank you to all of our panelists for coming on tonight and for answering all of our questions. I'd also like to thank the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning for their funding and support with this series, and also for Ausgreen with their support. Without these groups, we would not be able to do what we're doing today. This new series is definitely a step up from anything we've done before, and it is only possible because of the support that these groups have given us. So we're really, really thankful. Just a reminder that this is the first event in a Northeast Youth Climate Series, so there will be further events going on. So if you really enjoyed tonight's event and would like to be engaged in further events, make sure you keep up to date with our emails, our social media, and we do still have the opportunity for you to have some input into what you would like to see in further events. So when we send out a feedback form at the end of tonight's Zoom, we will send back a link, and you can go into that link and tell us what you'd like to see from further events. So I know tonight there was a lot of discussion around skills building and how to get in contact with your government or how to work with your government. So maybe that's something you'd like to see, or maybe there's something around waste management or, you know, fire management. I saw Sarah put a few questions in there about fire management. So just let us know via that link. And I think that is everything. I would like to thank you all for coming here tonight. This has been our biggest and my personal favourite of our event, and it would not be possible without such an engaged community. So thank you so much for all of you coming tonight and taking time out of your Wednesday evening.
Well done.